This is Darth Matthew, host of the Star Wars Generations and Superhero Ethics podcast, and I find your lack of membership disturbing. You can free yourself from the ads of those rebel scum by going to theethicalpanda.com and clicking join for $5 a month, $55 a year. No more ads, only the episodes, just as the Emperor intended.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Star Wars Generations podcast. Today, myself and Erin are talking about Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 2, Episodes 5 through 8. These are the episodes Erin has picked as the Brain Invaders plotline, the invasion of Geonosis, the Bug Queen, all sorts of great stuff. Alex, unfortunately, could not be joining us. We do have a third member of the pod with us today, young Pen Fox, the new youngling who has joined us. If you watch this on YouTube, you can see him. He is right now asleep. I don't know if he's going to add too much to the conversation. If he does add too much, we might have to end the conversation because he's very loud. But hopefully we'll be able to just go ahead and record. So here we are. Let's jump right in. We'll give some summaries for those who haven't seen him in a while. But let me just kind of start with, Erin, why did you pick these episodes?
Okay, so I chose these episodes a couple specific reasons. One, this is where we get the introduction of Barris Offee. And her relationship with Ahsoka is one of my favorite in all of Star Wars. Like, when these episodes came out, I just remember going on the Cartoon Network website and watching them for free over and over and over again, because they would only release 3 at a time that you could watch for free. So I would just spam watch them. So I've seen these episodes a lot. And I love the whole Barris and Ahsoka of it. I love that we get to see the clones kind of... It's interesting because it shows us when the clones appear to have no individuality, that it's actually suspicious to the Jedi because they're used to the clones having individuality. So I like that aspect. And then, of course, there is the contrast between Anakin Skywalker as a master and Luminara and Unduli as a master. So there's a lot of fun kind of things that we get, and some very interesting, like, it raises bigger questions about, like, the Geonosians are not droids. This is an actual living, breathing army that they fight. Yep. And it's not treated as such.
Yeah, and there's definitely some stuff we're going to talk about there, especially because this is the episode where Anakin and Ahsoka and then Kyle Mundi keep a running count of how many kills they make. They specifically say of how many droids we have killed, but they're doing this while fighting droids and Geonosians. So there's a lot there to unpack. Let me kind of give a brief summary of the episodes. It is 4 distinct episodes. It's kind of like 4 little mini stories all within one arc. The first 3 episodes, and actually all of them are about the Second Battle of Geonosis, in which there is this attempt to, at first they're trying to track down Poggle the Lesser, who is the, I don't think he was the ruler of Geonosis. He may have actually been, but he's part of the Separatist Council. He's kind of the Geonosian ambassador to the Separatist Council. He's a war criminal in their minds.
Yeah, my understanding is Poggle is like the forward-facing leader of the Geonosians. Like, he is kind of the leader that everyone looks to. Okay, so he's very much the leader. So the first 2 episodes are about an invasion of the planet. There's a huge new droid factory that's being built that's going to be, when it comes online, is going to, turn the tide of the war, because that'll be outnumbering the clone soldiers with how many droids they can make. So the first episode is about trying to land on the planet and all the different armies getting into position. The second is about a attempt to destroy the factory, in which it looks like Ahsoka and Barris Offee might have to sacrifice themselves, and Anakin and Luminara, their 2 masters, have very different reactions to it, which we'll talk about. The third one is about Poggle escaping and going into the kind of underground lair of a queen. And, the Geonosians have always looked kind of like if we are sort of the descendants of apes, these are the descendants of bugs of some kind, and they have wings and they have some kind of a hive mind. And people like Poggle seem to have individuality. This is definitely a queen situation with all of her drones, and it's kind of fun episode where Anakin just wants to kill the queen and get away, and Obi-Wan is going full on Steve Irwin and really just wants to study everything and wants to kind of watch how they put this brain-invading worm into Luminara. Luminara does not like that idea. And we get some discussion of that. And then the last episode is about, as they're going away from the planet,
realizing that some of these brain-invading worms, the brain worms, have escaped with them, that they're slowly in the spaceship starting to take over, and that Ahsoka and Barris have a situation where they may have to blow up the ship or kill themselves. Ahsoka especially, because Barris has been taken over by one of the brain worms, and so it goes from there. And so rather than do each episode individually, I think we'll just talk about each of the kind of individual themes. And you, Erin, have talked a lot about why you liked Barris Offee so much. Talk about that. What is it you like about Barris Offee, and why do you like her so much in this arc?
I liked her so much in this arc originally, growing up watching this, because she is the polar opposite of Ahsoka.
Uh-huh.
But they both are still the best. Like, I still really loved both of these characters and looked up to them growing up. And it's interesting to see, like, the difference between the confidence Ahsoka has learned from Anakin, that kind of just like brazen, like, we got this, fuck it kind of confidence, versus the confidence that Luminara has taught to Barris, which is be confident because you've prepared and because you are ready. And so a big part of it is that Luminara instructs Barris to memorize like the catacombs that are underneath the droid factory, and it's some 800 turns or whatever that she has to memorize.
Right.
And it's like the entire mission of Ahsoka and Barris getting to the energy reactor, whatever it is they kind of call it, they're trying to blow up, hinges on the fact that Barris can remember these things.
Right.
And so it's interesting seeing like Ahsoka and Barris go into this, because Anakin's like, well, are you sure like she really knows what's going on? And Luminara's like, I told her to be prepared, so I like trust that she is.
Yeah.
Like, I told her to do what she has to do. And then Ahsoka even tries to like rush into the catacombs first, and Barris is like, well, I'm the one who actually memorized it, so how about I go first? And Ahsoka, she doesn't have that. I feel like oftentimes if Anakin is told to step back or go second instead of going first, he kind of like grumbles a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But Ahsoka like had this moment where I thought she was going to grumble, but then she was like, be my guest, like in an actual not snarky way, but like like go ahead. Like, you actually know what's going on. I'm going to kind of yield to you in this situation.
Right. Yeah, I think at first they definitely clash.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this will seem tropey, but I think it's a good, execution of the trope of like the one person who's kind of the rule breaker and the other one is the goody two shoes, and they both judge each other, and then they both come to like, find some common ground with each other and like each other. And I think there's a lot of fan fiction about them like turning out to be really good friends, and some about them turning out to date or something like that.
Yeah.
And later we will see the fragileness of the kind of rigidity of rules in Barris Offee's case. That is, we'll see both of them have their place challenged, and I think these episodes really help to set that up, even though it's a couple seasons later.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because in that first episode, or I guess that's the second episode where they blow up the droid factory. The bombs get taken, a Geonosian sees them come in, and they kind of sit there, and Barris is like, they're inside the tank because the tank was trying to kill them. So they go inside this super new tank to hide. And Barris is like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I used all my resources that I prepared carefully, and it didn't work out. And Ahsoka's like, well, we're in this impenetrable tank. I'm pretty sure it could fuck up the reactor core if we really want it to.
Right.
And so it's like Ahsoka's ability to think outside the box and be creative is what really like shows them being able to complete their objective. And then after that, she's able to use their broken communicators or power cells or something to contact Anakin so that they can pinpoint where Barris and Ahsoka are in the wreckage of the fallen droid factory.
Right.
Otherwise, we never would have seen those two Padawans again.
Yeah. And we'll definitely get to that because the way those two react to the near-death situation and the way Anakin and Luminara react is, I think, very telling and sets up a lot. But just on that partnership, I think I love the way you put that, because I think that's Barris is much better at making a plan than Ahsoka is. Barris is much more prepared, but Ahsoka is much better at improvising. Ahsoka is much better at, and I think, a lot of great kind of buddy movie type things are often about, those two things working in partnership, because you really need both, and kind of both of them learning from each other in that regard. And I really love that. So let's talk about the lessons that Anakin and Luminara go through with this. And it's somewhat also how they react, the kids react, but them especially. In that second episode, they use the tank to blow up the reactor to destroy the factory, and it causes massive destruction, which they fully expect they're going to die from. And Barris, I think, both Barris and Luminara are presented, I think, as the much more traditional, like, this is how a Jedi is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you kind of need that somewhat, because we're always told Anakin is a rebel. Even Obi-Wan was kind of a Qui-Gon certainly was a rebel. It's kind of nice to know what is it they're rebelling against. And Luminara, I think, has a real understanding of, I don't have attachments. I think she cares for Barris. She very much wants the best for Barris. She understands that Barris is a soldier, and she understands that Barris might die, just as she might die. And when she and Anakin face the possibility that the two of them might die, in part even before like this all happens, when they're going out on the mission themselves, Luminara is much calmer about that. And I think representing that idea of like, this is how a Jedi is supposed to be. Whereas Anakin is much more emotionally upset and become, he refuses to accept that they may have died. Mm-hmm. And it seems pretty clear that Luminara is judging him. And here's where I'm curious how you thought of it, because on the one hand, it feels like they're setting up, this is another sign of Anakin's problems because he is too emotional. He does make these connections that the Jedi are not supposed to. But of course he's right. Luminara would have let them die. And but the thing is that they are alive. And also Barris would have probably just accepted that they were going to die. And Ahsoka's like, no, we're going to fight for life just in case. Mm-hmm. I think I know how I understand this, but I'm curious for you. How do you understand what the story is kind of telling us there about Anakin and Luminara and their Padawans and who's right or wrong in terms of this emotion and connection and all that?
I feel like that's a big question because it says a lot of things depending on your age group. Like when I was younger, what it told me was like, never give up on your friends, never give up on the people you trust, because Luminara is in the wrong. And that was crazy of her to be like, well, they've given us a great sacrifice. And Anakin was like, no, we got to dig. And she was like, I don't really know if that's necessary. They're probably already gone.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, that seemed like very calloused and shocking that she would give up in that way. But like you also have mentioned, it was just so calm. It's more about this acceptance in a calm way rather than a helpless way.
Yeah.
I feel like. Because then, once they got a little signal and they figured out where it was coming from, she helped Anakin lift the rocks and free their Padawans. It's not that she was unwilling to help or unwilling to try. She just didn't see, like, a jumping point, I feel like, is maybe a way to say it. And so now, I mean, as an adult, knowing and understanding so much more of the nuances of the Jedi and the Clone Wars in itself and what that kind of wartime meant. And I thought it was interesting what you said about Luminara understanding that Barris is a soldier. But Jedi were never supposed to be that.
Yeah.
And Luminara, like you kind of said, I feel like she quickly adopted that and wove it into the Jedi kind of morals. Mm-hmm. Which all just kind of results in the fall of the Jedi, is when you take these morals that don't align, but you're forced to try and make it work. So you're like, well, we're taught to have non-attachment and taught that it's okay to let go of things. So now in these really bad situations, like maybe I should just let go rather than digging my heels in and fighting a little harder.
Yeah.
For just like the lives of others who see things the same way as you. So I guess I don't really know what the overall story it's trying to tell us is. I think it's another one of the many examples we get in the Clone Wars of like, well, Anakin broke the rules and like you said, he was right. Yeah. And in 2 episodes later, we see Ahsoka had the opportunity to, does she dock this ship that is full of infected clones that might get out, but she thinks she's done the right thing to keep it from being infectious, but she doesn't know.
Yeah.
And so she has this moment also where she was like, she asks Anakin about it later, like, did I make a mistake? What if the snakes weren't, or what if the worms weren't dormant? What if thousands had died because of what I chose to do? Like Barris asked me to kill her. Barris said that it would be best if we did that.
Yeah.
And yet Ahsoka chose like her master did. And in this situation, again, she was right. She was able to save more lives that way.
Yeah, I think this is such an interesting thing. And I agree with you. I think it is rather intentional that the story is not necessarily telling us, which one is right between Luminara and Anakin in the general sense, and that, yes, in this case, Anakin was right. It might be there's a general principle, like being overly emotional or being overly logical, like neither one is probably great. But I think, to me, more than anything, this is one of the episodes that really is fantastic for setting up the prequels, because I think in this episode, I don't know what the audience is supposed to think, but I think it's very clear that Anakin walks away learning that the Jedi perspective on non-attachment is bullshit.
Yeah.
Because as he sees it, Luminar would have let Ahsoka die.
Yeah.
And and maybe I'm projecting here, but I think this is intentional. And granted, Clone Wars comes afterwards, but I think they did it in mind. Remember in Revenge of the Sith, Alex makes me so mad here because I'm going to say something really good about this movie, his favorite. One of the hard scenes is where Anakin kind of goes with some of his fears to Yoda, and he doesn't explicitly say Padme, and maybe Yoda realizes who he's talking about, or maybe he doesn't. But Yoda's kind of like, you have to be willing to let go. Mm-hmm. And I can see a connection here of Anakin hearing Luminara, being willing to accept the death of Padme, and, that's the thing, but being willing to accept the death of Barris, and kind of saying to Anakin, you have to be willing to accept the death of Ahsoka, but he realizes, no, he could save her. And so now, when Yoda and others are saying, you have to be willing to accept the death of people close to you, like Padme and your unborn child, of course, after this experience, he's going to be like, this is Barris all over again. Of course I'm not going to listen to that horse shit. I'm going to try and save Padme, and I need to find someone who will help me, and the Emperor's willing to help, and they won't. Like, to me, this helps me understand him in Revenge of the Sith so much more, and I think that is such brilliant storytelling.
Absolutely. And one thing that I find really interesting about this entire arc of episodes is that this is the second invasion of Geonosis. When I grew up watching this, I wasn't connecting it to the movies, but this is the first time we were seeing these Jedi back on this planet after the Colosseum event, where they're kind of like hunted. And I will remind you, Luminara and Barris were there.
Yeah.
In the live action, you can see both of them are present at that Colosseum. And so I think it's just interesting to watch those episodes, keeping that in mind and noticing how the Jedi, Anakin especially, even I feel like Ki-Adi-Mundi a little bit, and definitely the clones, they have these like racial prejudices against the Geonosians.
Right.
Which from trauma you can understand it, but it doesn't make it right in war. It doesn't make it, oh haha, they're just bugs, let's burn them alive because it works and their wings are flammable. Like it takes the Clone Wars into a much darker place, I think, in a very subtle way that if you don't know to look for it or to pay attention to it, you wouldn't. So like as a child, it didn't seem so dark, but like looking at it now, I'm like, oh my God. Like, and having read some of the literature about the clones, like the first invasion of Geonosis was incredibly traumatizing for all of them too, because they were sent out with fresh battalions, never having fought before. Most of them came back with maybe one or two other squadron members, everyone else dead.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting for me to watch these episodes and keeping that in mind, just how like traumatized and prejudiced everyone is in these situations, and how Kenobi, even though he was there during the first invasion, he's still, like you said, giving it a Steve Irwin try. He's like, I'm going to take this bug home and I'm going to study it. And Anakin's like, oh my God, it's going to get you. Slaps his hand, stomps on it. Mm-hmm. Obi-Wan's like, I was going to study that. Anakin goes, study the bottom of my boot. He's like, fuck you, dude. We got to go.
No, it's so true. And like, the Geonosians are portrayed as this great threat. And yes, they're building all the droids. But as you said, the Republic invades their planet twice. Mm-hmm. Like, they are not going out and being they are in other parts of the war, but like, Obi-Wan and then Anakin and Padme were all kind of like infiltrating Geonosian, military installations to learn secrets about them. And so the Geonosians are going to kill them in their criminal system. And it's pretty brutal and it's horrific and it's gladiatorial. But like, there have been Americans who've been, convicted for doing convicted under terrible laws in other countries, where we might really object to that. We want, think of Brittany Greer, the black lesbian basketball player who got arrested for just having pot in Russia and was going to go through this horrible sentence. And but if we set the U.S. Army to rescue people like this, it would be. I mean, we have done that. The English certainly have done that in their colonial days and stuff like that. But it doesn't seem good. And yeah, I really love that you pointed out at the very beginning that they don't seem to differentiate between fighting the droids and fighting the Geonosians. Yeah. And I was wondering about that with the first episode, because the first episode is where they have the count and where Ahsoka and Anakin are kind of jokingly talking about how many droids they can kill. And I was wondering if they were going to say how many kills they have. They do specifically say droids. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some acceptance of the droids are not living sentient beings the way the Geonosians are. And I think you can argue at sentience, at least from the Jedi perspective, maybe droids aren't alive in the Force or something. I don't know how they rationalize it, but I can sort of get it. But it felt very weird for them to have this idea of just counting how many kills like it's sport in a way that totally I don't want to say dehumanizes, but desentientizes the people they're fighting against.
And in the episode where it's the soldiers.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's not just droids, it is Geonosians as well. And even Kyle Mundi is treating it as sport.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was at first I thought it was really offensive, really kind of problematic that they do it that way. And then I realized, no, it's brilliant. It's brilliant writing of showing even these enlightened Jedi Masters are falling into these traps.
Yeah. Because if I can point out, Landing at Point Rain is the name of the first episode, I believe. And Ki-Adi-Mundi's squad, all the squads are supposed to land together. They land separately. They all have their own kind of obstacles to overcome. Ki-Adi-Mundi and his squad fight almost exclusively Geonosians. There are very few droids. They end up kind of in this cave system, wandering through this cliff, and it's just all these Geonosians. And I brought this up earlier, that they resort to flamethrowers.
Right.
Which, burning somebody or something alive is one of the most horrific things you can do. Talk about war crimes. That's a war crime. And so it's just wild to see this Jedi, like you said, that's supposed to be so enlightened. We know he's one of the oldest Jedi. He was there in the Acolyte. We know his species lived so long. He's supposedly so wise, so respected. And yet, I can pretty much guarantee you not all the kills he was counting were droids.
Yeah, that's true. And I would push back a bit. I think using flamethrowers against helpless people or something like that, definitely war crime. I think it's a pretty gruesome way to fight. If you're using it against people who are also trying to kill you, I'm not sure if it's a war crime. But certainly it's a pretty awful weapon of war, I think, to be sure. Yeah. It's actually, I hadn't even thought of that, but you're right. The idea that Kyle Mundi gets that count specifically from droids is probably not the case. So let's now talk about the second two episodes and kind of where it shifts into this stuff about the Queen. Because here, even more so, it does feel like the Queen is very much set up as horror movie scary. She's got a dark, creaky voice. She uses these brain control powers. But also, she's literally doing nothing to the Republic. She's just hanging out with them underground. Poggle goes there, and so they chase them. And so, yeah, she wants to, get them now that they've chased her. Mm-hmm. But the degree of just, we've got to just fuck her up entirely, rather than just, we need to just get Luminara and go. Yeah. I thought, again, it's kind of really showing, how much they are internalizing the kind of awful war ideas of, they're the enemy, we have to treat them like the enemy instead of, other living beings. And that's what makes, as silly as the Steve Irwin-ness is, it feels he's the most Jedi in that moment.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I literally described these episodes to my mother yesterday as my personal horror film as a 7-year-old. I was like, these were one of the scariest two, Legacy of Terror and Brain Invaders, scariest two episodes growing up for me. And it's interesting because we see this temple in these statues and it's grotesque and it's scary. But if you take away the creepy music and the context, this is history. This is the legacy of these people, and it's been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe thousands. We don't know.
Yeah.
And like you said, the only person that brought the war there was that Poggle captured Luminara. If Poggle had not brought her there, nobody would have discovered the Queen. Nobody would have cared.
Yeah.
And yeah, the fact that I think it's just one of those things that like gets spiraled out of control due to necessity, because it's like, okay, you want to go get Luminara back. Well, now your problem is that she's being guarded by people you can't kill. So how are you going to get her and then get the fuck out without being massacred on the way out and without them following you because you can't kill them?
Right.
So I understand how they end up kind of like burying everybody,
Yeah.
but it doesn't make it okay or right. Like,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if that queen wants to hatch eggs and invade all the dead Geonosians she wants, that's their culture, that's her prerogative, go for it.
Yeah.
But it's just like so many things I think we see in other fantasy stuff and even the real world, it's like just the tiniest drop of war can decimate culture.
Yeah, it's really true. And I think that's where also, like, I think Obi-Wan is much more in tune with what the Jedi are supposed to be, but that also doesn't mean he's right. Because he is kind of like, well, let's let Luminara just be a little bit controlled by the brain worms, like just to see what happens. And she's like, no, please not, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think he is he's definitely the least warlike of them, and is understanding her. But he's again so interested that he's not willing to look at the consequences of that. And I think that's just it. It's played for comedy, and I think it is quite funny, and also horror movie. But I think it does raise some really great questions about like this is not stuff any of them have thought about, because again, as you were saying, they're not expected to be soldiers. Like West Point and Annapolis and places like that teach courses on like battlefield ethics, and I would certainly, I think a lot of people would be like, they probably don't do a good enough job of that, but at least like there's an understanding of like, we're preparing you to be soldiers, so we're going to prepare you for the ethical questions you'll have to face. These people have never faced that. Like Obi-Wan was trained to respect all life, but then like questions of like, what do you do when like the life you want to study and learn is a threat to some other life? Like, or, as you said, like you're fighting enemies who are trying to kill you, and the only way you can kill them is with this horrific tactic of flamethrowers. Like, what do you do there? The Jedi have never prepared for this.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you kind of pointed out and walked back the idea of like war crime versus just gruesome method of war. Because, I just kind of wasn't fully thinking it through, but that makes a lot of sense of how it's like, it's not necessarily, it's gruesome, but it's morally understandable when you're defending your own life.
Well, and I'll even say, like, I'll give you more credit. I think when we say it is like literally a war crime, at least what I interpret that to mean is by the Geneva Conventions that this world at this time goes by as the literal legal definition of war crime, I don't think it qualifies. But I think, we could, like, those are by no means the end all be all of what should or shouldn't be military ethics, And so I think, you're raising a really good point there too.
And I feel like it's a fun term. Not fun, but like a term people throw around when talking about R2-D2 and Chopper a lot, about like how many war crimes have these droids committed. So I feel like, I kind of just, the word got mixed up, but.
No, I mean, every time I take a bottle away from this kid because I need to switch what arm I'm holding him with, he will start yelling and screaming, and I will make a joke of, oh, sorry, alert Geneva, I've committed war crimes again.
Alert Geneva.
So
That's funny.
I get it.
That's good.
All right, so let's talk about the Brain Invaders, the last episode. Give us a rundown of what happens in this episode, because clearly it's one you know very well.
Okay, so first we're on Geonosis, and there's these clones, and they're kicking it. And this one clone is like, boys, the captain, he's like, boys, we're going to ship out, and we're going to go deliver medical supplies, because it's our job and it's important. And this one guy's like, ew, what the fuck, we're soldiers, why are we here? And then the captain's like, sit down and shut up. What we're doing is important. And while this is happening, nobody notices. In the background, somebody's taking a nice little nap. A little egg cracks, and a snake goes up his nose while he's napping.
Yeah.
And so then we see later, somebody's like, hey, wake up. Like, it's time to go. He kind of shakes his head. His eyes roll completely from the back of his head to the front of his eyes. And then he stands up from his waist first. Like, waist first, rest of his body stands up afterwards. Like, disgusting. Like, horror movie shit. And then we see his backpack has a bunch of those little eggs in it. So basically we're led to believe in the destruction of the queen, it did not destroy the idea of this hive mind or these little Geonosian brain invading worms, because, I mean, they're still there all over the planet, and they're smart enough to make their way into a clone and then have that clone take a bunch of them onto this medical supply ship. They get on the ship. Ahsoka and Barris are trying to sleep. Ahsoka's bad at sleeping. Barris is like, just go to sleep. Ahsoka's like, it's
Yeah.
too fucking quiet. Let's go eat. So they go to eat, and then they get attacked by these two clones, and they're like, what the hell? They kind of knock them out. And Ahsoka's like, well, these people, like, they're my friends. Like, they never would have just attacked us for no reason. These two other clones come in. They draw their lightsabers. The clones have their guns. They're like, whoa, what's going on? We just heard a commotion. And so one of them is the captain or commander, something or another. His name's Trap. So they're like, okay, like, Trap and Barris and Ahsoka set off to go secure the bridge or something. And this other guy was supposed to watch the two clones that were down. Anyways, slowly people get infected. Ahsoka and Barris walk in to this like barrack area, and they see this guy being like held down and forced to be turned by one of these like brain worms. It's actually very chilling. The way we first saw them invade the ship is that you are in the barracks, you see all the clones sleeping. This guy takes the eggs and rolls them out like bowling pins.
Yeah.
And then the snakes come out, and then you at the same time see everyone sit directly up in their bed.
Yeah.
And like,
it's very well done.
If that's not a horror movie, I don't know what is. If that's not a horror movie for 7-year-olds, I don't know what is. Like, it's so scary. And so, yeah, basically, Ahsoka and Barris are confused. They're trying to gain control of the ship. We see that the infected go and they kill the pilots. So now the ship is just kind of like doing whatever it wants. Ahsoka and Barris get in contact, or Ahsoka gets in contact with Anakin. She's like, yo, what the fuck? These people are going crazy. There's worms in their brains. Anakin is like, I'm going to go talk to Poggle. Proceeds to choke the shit out of Poggle and not talk to him at all. And then he goes, hey, yo, Ahsoka, by the way, they're afraid of the cold. Just make it cold as shit in there. And then she turns down the AC. She's wandering around. Mind you, this entire time, they let a 12-year-old on the battlefield in a fucking tube top. So Miss Tube Top is scooting around this ship. It's slowly dropping to below freezing. And she's just trying to get back to the bridge so she can kind of try and dock it to this medical base safely. We see towards the end, Barris has been infected, and she's chasing Ahsoka, trying to hunt Ahsoka. Ahsoka goes in the vents, gets down. She goes to the bridge. Barris follows her, starts attacking her on the bridge. The ship's going out of control. And Barris... the worm starts to come out of her mouth while she's talking to Ahsoka because the cold is kind of ejecting the worm. And, you know, she slashes through a vent. Ahsoka takes this hose and blasts her with even more AC. She's screaming. And literally the subtitles say demonic screaming.
Yeah. It's fucked up.
And Barris says, like, just kill me. Please kill me. And Ahsoka's like, no, I won't. And, like, you know, like kicks her, hits her with the ice cold stuff again. And then, like, we see finally Barris is on her knees screaming, clutching her throat. This snake is, like, coming out of her mouth. And Ahsoka has her lightsaber. And we hear, like, ka-cha, you know, and she, like, draws her lightsaber. We don't know what happened. Did she kill Barris? Did she not? Da-da-da. They dock safely. Kit Fisto is the liaison sent on to make sure everything is okay with some clones. And he finds Ahsoka and Barris in the cockpit with Barris kind of curled up in Ahsoka's lap.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. It's really powerful on all levels. I just want to set it up with a couple of things. First, this may be well before your time, but do you know the movie Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan? Star Trek II.
Aware of it, have not seen it.
So there's definitely some ways in which this is referencing that. It also, I think, is kind of referencing the Lord of the Rings with the whole, like, counting the kills and Legolas and Gimli doing that. But in Attack of the Clones, in The Wrath of Khan, the second Star Trek movie, there's this kind of, like, brain-invading worm, and it enters through the ears and affects in very much the same way, and it looks very similar. And there's at one point Obi-Wan says, when he, like, wants to be Steve Irwin, I wonder if this is going to enter through the ears or the nose. And so I think that was like, this is not coincidence. They knew exactly what they were doing.
Kind of a reference to it.
Also, as a side note, because it is kind of treated as a side note, but I think it's another thing. Yeah, no, even the baby's upset about this. As you said, Anakin straight up tortures Poggle.
Yeah.
Like, this is police brutality. All their people have been trying to get Poggle to talk. He's refused to talk. He goes in, Poggle says, like, your Jedi mind tricks won't work on me. Anakin says, who's going to use mind tricks, and starts to be incredibly violent towards him. And I'm curious, especially as a young kid, how did you see that? Did you see that as, like, cool, go get him. You're willing to do the hard thing to get it. Did you get it as like, oh my God, this is police brutality. This is horrible and wrong. How did you view it?
Oh, no. As a kid, like, for me, I'm not every kid. For me, I'm like, get his ass, Anakin, get him. Because that's a war criminal. Like, I don't have the nuances in my brain to process, like, no, he was defending his planet. He was doing what was right in the laws of his, like, law enforcement or legal system or whatever. Yeah. But also, it's like, what's funny to me is that Anakin is torturing him. It's not funny. What is interesting to me is that Anakin is torturing him. They don't even speak the same language. So Poggle could actually be telling him the answers. I just watched these yesterday, but I was also playing a game on my phone because I have ADHD. So I don't remember for sure if there was a translator there. But if Anakin is just torturing this being with no translator, what are we hoping for?
C-3PO or at least some protocol droid is there.
There was one there? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And kind of like he can't look upset, but he kind of has like oh no, don't do this.
What are you doing? Yeah.
And I think it's very much intended to do that. And I think like, I grew up, and I think even still today, Lethal Weapon is my favorite example of this. These were weapons about, cops who are willing to break the rules to like do the right thing. And it was often because they're willing to like kick the shit out of, witness, people they're trying to get information from. And like, you're right. I think there's a moral justification for what Poggle is doing. I think even if he's not, even if he is just like a terrible criminal, like still abusive torture is just not it. Especially because these movies always show us, our TV shows, like it works. Most of the time it doesn't actually work. But I think it's very much supposed to be one more of those, like the fact that it's blink and you miss it and we don't focus on it, I think is very intentional. And it's another reason I love these movies, because it's like, no one asks Anakin, how did you find this out? Because there's a huge problem about to happen if he didn't do this.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that just goes into more of like how the Jedi don't have rules and regulations set up for wartime. So they can't be like, oh, Anakin did that wrong because we're not supposed to interrogate people that way. There's no rules saying the Jedi are even supposed to ever interrogate people. There's there's nothing about that. Like, honestly, we've talked about this at length throughout our years on this podcast, but like the ethics of the Jedi mind trick even, and just like, is that really right? Is that really okay to do? And it's interesting. Like, I honestly almost glossed over it. I almost forgot how they even found out that the cold affects the worms. Because in my mind, I've seen those episodes so many times, and Anakin just goes, it's a 40-second scene, maybe, of him getting this information. And like you said, it's just glossed over. And I think it's done brilliantly, but it seems swept under the rug, but it's not.
Yeah, it's definitely part of this whole thing that we're seeing with him throughout these episodes. So Alex did send us in some recordings. I'm probably going to edit them in later, but what I'm going to have us do is you and I should both listen to those recordings now. The audience, will get to listen to them, and then we'll talk for a little bit about what Alex said and respond some to that, and then we'll wrap up the episode. Sound good?
Yeah, I guess he gets to hear his voice heard.
Ugh,
right. I guess he's part of this too.
My take on the Brain Invaders is it's one of my favorite episodes because it reveals the successful training of Anakin Skywalker and failings of very strict training like Luminara trains Barris. Furthermore, I think that it's so funny when Obi-Wan is like, I want to study this shit, and Anakin just wants to kill everything, and when it's coming out, like, it's supposed to the nose or the ear or the mouth, and of course, Anakin ruins it in the end for Obi-Wan by like destroying it, but only because he wants to protect everyone he loves. He thinks it's supposed to because he wants to protect everyone he loves. And so I think him throwing that worm makes sense. But Ahsoka having to stand up and fight back against the Brain Invaders by herself shows that Anakin's training is a foreshadowing to her surviving being killed by clones in After Order 66, and even before that when she was accused of false murder. So all I'm saying is Anakin is the goat of teaching. And Luminara is too strict, and that's my take.
Did you listen to it?
Yep. So you and I are having this nuanced conversation about like, well, so Luminara has some good points, Anakin has some good points. Alex is coming in literally saying Anakin is the goat of teaching and Luminara is not. Here we mean the goat as in the greatest of all time, not the goat as in, oh, they're terrible. Yeah, that's
like I just He started off with like, yeah, I think it's really interesting the contrast we see between like Anakin's teaching and Luminara's teaching, and that's just like very nuanced. And I was like, yeah, these are some great points. And then by the second I got to the second audio clip, it's just Anakin apologetics. Like, yeah, and Obi-Wan wanted to study it because that would have been the intelligent thing to do, but Anakin destroys it only because he's protecting the people he loved. You guys are gonna hear this. I don't need to reenact it, but it's just Alex being Alex.
Yeah.
One thing he did point out was that this situation is actually even further training for Ahsoka with the Order 66 situation. This is like her first instance of facing clones in an enemy way. That wasn't just training. That is like, these clones are actually trying to kill you.
Oh yeah, I'd never thought about that, but you're right. And again, in a similar way where, it's not necessarily their fault. It's not that they've decided to kill her or they have betrayed her. Their bodies are being controlled by something outside of their power. In one case, like a microchip in their brain. In another case, a worm in their brain. And the fact that she's had to face the situation before and now do it again is definitely really interesting. And I think the Anakin apologetics term makes the most sense. But I also get where he's coming from, because I do think that if this is your only piece of evidence, then of course Anakin's right. Like Luminara literally was. If Luminara had done what she wanted to do, the other two would have died. And I think that there's a larger picture in which, I think in the same way that Ahsoka and Barris need each other, maybe actually part of the point here is that Ahsoka and Barris are able to see some common ground between the two of them, and Luminara and Anakin are not.
Yeah.
But because I do agree with Alex that, like, yes, in this situation, Anakin is right, but I think you and I are both on the like, well, but maybe that doesn't make him always right. Maybe there is some danger here in the like, I'm doing it. He does something that other people think is problematic to protect the people he loves. And I get what Alex is saying, but that's kind of Anakin's version of I was just following orders. Like, he's willing to justify some pretty terrible things in order to protect the people he loves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, I just love these episodes.
They're really good.
They're really good. So good. I had to go on like a 15-minute rant last night defending to my mother why it was okay that I was allowed to watch the Clone Wars when I was little. Because I recently went through a breakup, so my family's been spending more time at my place than before. And so my mom came over and was like, oh, like, what are you watching? I was like, oh, I'm watching the Clone Wars. I used to consider these my personal horror film. She hates anything horror, anything scary. She won't even watch Lord of the Rings just because of Gollum, just because he looks gross. That's her only reason. I don't know if I agree with cute, but I don't think it's a reason to avoid the entire trilogy.
He's just a little guy.
But it was funny. I had to like walk it back and be like, no, Mom, this show taught me a lot of really important things, like the importance of individuality and how to like accept people who are different from you and work together. And I put together a pretty good pitch as to why a 7-year-old should have been allowed to watch Clone Wars, and that was okay.
Look, personally, I think a whole bunch of talking vegetables discussing theology is pretty terrifying. So, everyone's got their own
That was my shit growing up, too. I mean, either VeggieTales or Star Wars, man.
I do believe that I want to be a pirate who doesn't do anything. And
that would be fun.
Have never been to Boston in the fall. But, okay, deep cuts are over. We're time to move on. Yeah, these are great episodes. Erin, thank you so much for bringing them in. Alex, I'm sorry you couldn't join us, but I'm so glad you got to listen in and hear our thoughts, and I'm sure we'll have further discussion next episode. To our fans, what do you think? What do you think of these episodes? Let us know. All the ways to contact us are in the show notes, but of course you can always just go to theethicalpanda.com. On behalf of myself and Erin and an absent Alex and Little Pen here, thank you so much. May the Force be with you.
I've got 3 closing quotes. First of all, Anakin goes, how did you know they wouldn't attack us? Obi-Wan goes, because I make observations while you think with your lightsaber.
The closest this show will ever come to making a dick joke.
So close to a dick joke. It's so close.
Also, and then in honor of Alex, stay classy, Geonosis.
Hopefully the secret is buried with her. The secret was, in fact, not buried with her.
Also so good. So good. And number 3?
No, that was actually all. Number 1 was the Anakin portion and then the Obi-Wan portion.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, again, thank you very much. We're out.